Kia ora tātou. I actually am going to speak about the Working Party. I was privileged to be invited to take part as a early childhood representative, and what I've found going around the country is that a lot of even well-informed union members weren't quite sure what we were doing. So the joint initiative was obviously with the ministry to come up with a better plan than the one that had been mooted by the government, called Investing in Educational Success. That plan was rejected by over 90% of you as members because you couldn't see the model working for you. It was a one-size-fits-all model where many decisions, like the number of schools or centres in each cluster and who would lead them, was predetermined by the ministry. And as we know, teachers aren't very keen on being told what to do. So when our union started planning for the work that we would do on the Joint Initiative Working Party, they sent out surveys nationally to everyone in the sector. And those surveys would have found examples of great practice, especially in the field of collaboration and transition, which were two areas of real importance and interest to both the ministry and the union. We received many surveys and they showcased fantastic examples of collaboration and transition. We visited as many sites as practical over the first 6 months of this year, and certain themes became evident. Firstly, all of the schools and centres that we visited or heard presentations from were responding to the needs of their tamariki and whānau and communities, and each of those sites, it looked very different. It was very purposely fitted to their community. And secondly, the groupings of schools and centres wasn't imposed, but it was developed through time as relationships were built. And some of these relationships had been 10 years in the making. Thirdly, there was often no funding, or the funding had run out. But teachers and early childhood workers continued to carry on with their projects because they were committed to seeing it through. So even though there's currently no funding for ECE in either the IES or the Better Plan, the NZEI felt it was imperative to include our sector as we're an integral part of each child's educational pathway. And also it gives us a starting point for negotiating funding if we are to be included in the Better Plan. Over the 6 months, we found teachers in ECE using the principles and the goals and the strands of Te Whāriki to respond to the needs and interests of their tamariki and whānau and communities, and they did it in lots of interesting ways. In Pororua, the Kindergarten Association responded to a request from 3 distinct communities, Tokoloan, Nuan and Samoan. These communities had run separate little playgroups in the areas, in church halls and empty school classrooms, and they were finding it really hard to sustain this. They were looking for stability and adequate funding and a way to showcase their language and culture and identity over time, which wasn't dependent on willing available parents and having to keep shifting to affordable buildings. So after much consultation and collaboration with the community, a beautiful new kindergarten was built called Toruwhetū, and that houses 3 vibrant communities offering early education in their own language. They share a common meeting space in the middle of the building. This took years to develop, and it wasn't without its challenges. Each group had to learn how to work with the others, compromise and effectively communicate their ideas and their values and beliefs to the other groups. One example of a challenge that they faced was the organisation of the opening ceremony, which was followed by a feast. A leader from the Kindergarten Association had thought, maybe because that was her culture, that each group would contribute food and that it would all be set on a main table. This idea was met with horror as each group had very definite ideas of what they would provide and how they would set it up. The result was that each group had their own table with their own food from their own culture set up in ways that suited them. Toruwhetū has found that collaboration looks different depending on who's in the group. This kindergarten is continually evolving and changing though, and their community events look very different now, with more intermingling and sharing of roles and resources. This example was around a community collaborating for the good of tamariki and ECE and based on mainly the principles of language and identity. It wasn't as common to find examples of centres and schools working together though, for obvious reasons. Firstly, as we all know, we work different hours to school teachers. Most schools would meet straight after school for their professional development. And when they did invite centres, their neighbouring ECE centres, the timing was no good, teachers couldn't be released, and there was no funding for relief teachers. Secondly, the schools reported having up to 30 contributing schools, and they felt overwhelmed trying to make contact with them all to organise meetings. Similarly, as most of you will know, centres have children going to schools that could be spread over a 50-kilometre radius. With not enough non-contact time to visit and arrange meetings, this also seems overwhelming to organise smooth transition for children and families. Where we observed transitions working really well were in small communities that share the same children from ECE through to secondary school. The Paeroa cluster was one example where geographically the cluster of 10 shared children through from ECE to secondary, and children don't move out of the area. Another example was Mana Tamariki in Palmerston North, where all learning from ECE through to uni is in Māori and on one site. These children are part of a learning community where everyone knows them in their whānau, and there are shared values, understandings and beliefs. Where geography stops easy visits and transitions, we saw some really creative solutions. Some kindergartens and centres had created photo books of new entrant teachers, school playgrounds, children that were attending the school from the kindergarten, so the children felt a sense of belonging, security and confidence in what they would see and do when they went to that school. Some new entrant teachers were coming to centres regularly to read and get to know children in their own environments. And both new entrant teachers and ECE teachers all talked to us at length about their desire to do more of this type of visiting, learning about each other's curriculum and sharing ideas and information, but all cited lack of time and no funding for release as their major obstacles. A common theme we saw with all thriving learning communities of teachers was that they were all driven by people with a common moral purpose, an idea of our children, not my children, or it takes a village to raise a child. This is a challenge to us in early childhood centres as we struggle with the private versus public competitive model. Educators told us it took a mind shift initially to see children in their town or their region as their collective responsibility. But where this has happened, it's dissolved the competitive spirit and teachers have worked together on common goals to raise achievement across a town or a region. Leadership's crucial to the success of these groups and seems initially to be driven by really passionate, motivated people who volunteer to lead or steer a group. Once groups have formed, built relationships and know each other's strengths and abilities, the groups often have interchangeable leaders or share the responsibilities equitably. Again, time was crucial in this area as it takes time to build trust, share vital information, build understanding and develop that shared purpose. As motivated teachers, we often see things that affect us in our local area and suspect other teachers and centres are experiencing the same issues. This happened in our area last year, which is Clendon, Manurewa. Our roles were dropping and it was particularly affecting small community-based centres who were running on tight budgets. Bigger privately owned centres were opening all around us and were offering many incentives like free transport, nappies, free formula, free food, and in some cases free care. 8 centres formed a collaborative group to work on sharing ideas, problem solving and collecting data to see what would and what wouldn't work. There will be issues in your centres and local areas that others may also be experiencing. It only takes a group email, a phone call, or a visit in your lunch break to start this process. My challenge to you is to look outside your own centre to find like-minded people who you can form relationships with and begin working on common issues or goals. It takes motivation, passion and commitment, which you've all shown by coming along tonight. So I wish you good luck in whatever you decide to undertake after this evening. Thank you.